everyone, it's Lisa from I Dream in Soap. Welcome to my channel and thanks for dropping by. Now today I'm trying out a new cat mould that I've made. I've had quite a few people request another cat mould and a number of people have asked for a cat that's actually laying down. So that's what I've made and that's what I'm testing out in this video. Now I've got quite a full jug here. That's because I'm going to do several things with this batter. I've actually got 2 cat embed moulds to do, and also I need some batter to do something else with, which we'll have a look at in a minute. So as normal, all I've done here is added my lye into my oils. Both of these are between 80 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm literally just going to bring them only to emulsion. I definitely don't want to trace because I want to put some of this aside and use it in a little while. So for my design, I'm aiming to do a cute little cat. I'm going to do a tabby cat in this soap, laying on a windowsill, looking out of the window at some birds flying past. So that's the plan. So I need to make my cat embeds a day before I make the rest of the soap. So I've calculated how much batter I need for my cat embed, and I'm just going to divide that out into 2 colours so I can get my tabby cat. I am making 2 loaves of this design, so therefore you may every now and again see me doing something twice, or maybe it looks like I haven't used all my batter up. That's probably because I've made enough to fill the other mould up as well. But I'm not going to go through everything twice, so we're just really going to concentrate on one of these soaps that I'm building. So the first colour I'm using for my stripy tabby cat is Black Gold from Mica Mama. And then I'll be using some activated charcoal for my black stripes. I do always tend to predisperse my activated charcoal in some oil, just like I do with my titanium dioxide, just because in the past I have found that where I've just literally tried to mix it in with the micas, bearing in mind I don't like to blend it in, I just like to stir it in, I was getting some little black speckles, so this sorts that out. I'm using Winter Wonderland from Nurture Soap today. I do really love this fragrance. Now in my recipe it does accelerate a little bit, but not terribly. You can still do quite a lot of good things with it. So I'll just weigh out the right amount that I need for each of my 2 colours. Now if you don't want to weigh it out accurately, obviously as long as you've weighed out the total amount that you're going to put in your soap accurately, you could sort of eyeball this a little bit. Bear in mind though, if you've got a fragrance that does accelerate a little bit, like for me this one does, it's probably best to have the same amount of fragrance oil in each of your colours because you don't want one to get a lot thicker than the other. I want the coat of my cat to have the sort of stripes that a tabby cat has. So therefore, rather than just doing a mixed up in the pot, I'm just going to pour it in as you would with something like a thin lines design, that sort of technique. So just layering the 2 colours into that 3rd jug. Now the idea when you do this is that one colour goes in sort of on top of the other. You don't want them to all mix in together. So just be a little bit careful with your pour and pour down the wall of your jug. As you can see here, I'm sort of using the spout to my advantage here to slow down the speed that that hits that jug. So I'll just carry on until I've used up both of my colours. I always think this looks really cool in the 3rd pot. So in comes one of our 2 new cat moulds that we're going to fill up, and I'm just going to do a thin line pour with this. Now I've lifted up my tray first of all because I don't want to tilt my jug too much, because that would make the batter come out too quickly. And as my batter starts to move out of the jug and I get less of it in there, then I can put that tray down on the side and pour a little bit more easily. Then the rest of that batter that's left in that jug I'll be using to fill up the other embed mould that I've got. Okay then, let's do something with, remember that batter we just mixed up and set off to the side earlier? So now we're going to do something with it, and it's dead exciting. I bet you can't wait. So I'm just going to turn it white, mix my white in, and then pour it into a mould and leave it, and that's it. See, you get to see all the cool stuff on this channel. Now I've made a little scraper that will come with these moulds if you bought one from the shop. Now you don't have to scrape off the bottom, there'll be nothing wrong with having just like a flat base to your cat embed, but if you wanted to give it some shape then you could just obviously scrape the base of your embed. Now this is just like any sculpted layer, except we're doing it in an embed mould. So just wait till you get to the point where your batter is set up enough just so it doesn't flow down on itself again. Don't let it get too stiff, otherwise you're going to end up dragging out chunks and just getting all sort of weird marks and things with your embed. Now this is the first time that I've used these moulds, and I think therefore in future I would possibly pour in a little bit less batter, because I've scraped off a reasonable amount. As you can see from that one mould, I've got that little blue cup, so I would say that in total there I've pulled out probably about 40-50 grams of soap batter there, which I'm just going to use for either some soap dough or just make a little soap with it. So once I've got both of those scraped, I'll then cover them and C-pop them, and they'll be ready to use the next day. The last bit of prep work I need to do is to extrude my birds, and I've got some extruded discs that make birds available in the shop. Now, I'm sorry about the rubbish quality of this bit of video. Somehow I managed to knock my camera off autofocus, so therefore this little bit here just came out really out of focus, and I've tried to sharpen it up through the editing. It's only for this little portion, so sorry about that. And normal service will be resumed shortly. So I'll just skip through this bit fairly quickly because you've all seen me extruding stuff before, and you can see here I'm just trying to make the birds that are going to go in those top frames of the window for the cat to be watching. I've printed out some of my design. Now these are actually printed out in the size that my bars of soap are going to be. I've got 4 of them, I think just because I put 4 on a sheet and printed them out. I don't need 4 of them. Now remember that exciting white soap that I made? What I've done is I've unmoulded it and I've sliced off, as you can see, a bit about 5mm thick. I've saved you the pain of watching that in the blurry zone, and you've seen me slice off thin bits of soap before. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to use this to make the central pane of my window, and that's where my pictures come in. I can use that to work out how big a piece of soap that I need here, and just cut it to size so it'll be ready to pop in my mould later. Now, I'm only doing the vertical bit with this soap. I'm deliberately not doing the horizontal strut. The reason for that is because of worrying about air bubbles and things. If you think about it, if you pour in your soap, so I'm going to pour in a layer of blue up to the first level of those windows, and then I want to have a white horizontal level. Now to get that in and to get it down flat with no air bubbles underneath and to get it nice and horizontal is potentially going to be a little bit of a pain. It might be alright, but for me I'm going to find it easier to pour a flat layer of soap and then pour a thin layer of white soap to make that horizontal beam. Okay, so let's get on with making the base of the soap. So I'm going to be using terracotta red and neon yellow, both from Mica Mama. And I'm using those to make an orange section. And I want that to be the wall below the windowsill. Now, obviously, if you've got your orange, just use orange. And I do have orange micas, but remember I'm in the UK, so I have assessments and I have certain colours that I've got approved to use in this recipe. Red and yellow are two of them. I don't have an orange. And that was a deliberate choice by me when I submitted my assessment, because if I had an orange, I'd always have to have orange. But if I've got red and yellow, I can have red, yellow and orange. So as this is a single colour pour, I haven't bothered pre-dispersing my micas because I'm going to add them just into my oils and blend them straight into my oils. Once they're blended in, I'll then add the lye solution and bring this up to an emulsion, and then add in my fragrance oil and just pour it in the mould. And then let's get out of this blurry zone. Onto the next layer, and this is going to be sort of the front aspect of the windowsill. Now when I'm after nice straight layers, I do like to make up individual little batches of soap. I just find it's the most reliable way to be able to pour in something when it's still at a light trace, and then you get a nice flat surface. Also, you then don't have to worry about the batter going thick in your jug and ruining your next layer. So I'm colouring this with some titanium dioxide and then just the tiniest drop of activated charcoal to give it a slightly grey tint. I don't want it to be a different colour, you know, I'm not trying to get a different colour windowsill. I just want to see the sort of side, the depth of the windowsill. That's why I'm shading it, so it's different to the flat bit that the cat's sitting on. So I'm not going to go through all of this process on the screen. You've seen it loads of times before, haven't you? Making up the batter, adding in the colouring and the fragrance oil, and then I'll just pour it into the mould. I've then measured out my next layer, which is going to be the white bit of the windowsill, and done exactly the same thing, making up my batter, and now I'm just pouring that layer into the mould. Now once my windowsill layers have set up a reasonable amount, I don't want them too solid, I'm going to add my cat embed. Now I do want to push the cat down, so can you see some of the cat should actually be sinking into that white layer. Squashing those embeds into the white layer will have actually disturbed it and possibly ruined that nice straight line. So I'm just dropping in another little bit of very fluid soap batter so I can then just spread that out and tap the mould down and get my straight lines back again. So now a very similar process. I'm just going to pour that first level of the windows. And I'm going to be using shimmer blue from Mica Mama and some titanium dioxide to get that sort of light sky colour that I want. So at the moment I've got a right old jug full of oils again, and I'm just mixing in my mica straight into my oils, and this is the oil that I'm going to need for all of my sky. I don't want to do two different mixes because I'm going to end up getting possibly two different colours. So mixing it all in with all the oils first of all, and then we'll split that blue oil out between the various batches. I've jumped forward to the bit where I've actually blended everything up, and I'm just going to pour it into the mould. So straight into the mould all round the cat, and then for this layer I'm going to insert that bit of window frame that we made out of that white soap. And then just a tiny weeny little batch with titanium dioxide to make the horizontal part of the frame. And notice all the time I'm keeping my fresh little made bits of batter nice and fluid, because that way I can get nice straight lines. And then our last layer of blue batter, and this time we've got to pop in those birds. So all that's left to do now is finish off the top. I've got a little bit of that blue batter left, and I'm just mixing it with a teeny weeny bit of activated charcoal. And I'm now going to draw some fantastic birds on the top of this soap. Do 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 do. You know, sometimes when you picture something in your mind and then it doesn't quite work out how you think it is. So these were supposed to be birds, but hey, they're little funny black shapes on the top of my soap. Bird drawing lessons part 2 will continue next week. So after I finished my magnificent bird design on the top of my soap, I C-popped it as normal, so into the oven at 170 degrees F, 70 degrees C. Turn the oven off once the soap goes in there and leave it to sit overnight. And now we're at the next day, we're just going to give a cut of one of the loaves. I've put my little plan back on the screen so we can see if we got what we were aiming for. And there we go. I do like my little cat. Now, if you are interested in buying this cat mould, it will be available for sale in the February the 1st shop update at I Dream in Soap. I'll put the address in the description box below. These bars will be for sale, but they're not going to be released until the March the 1st update, until they've fully cured. And then here are some final pictures of the soap. I hope you've enjoyed this video and that you like the soap. If you do, it would be great if you gave me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see what I'm making in the future, then why not subscribe to my channel? And if you've got any comments, then please leave them in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, everyone, Happy soaping!